another episode of the Claw's Corner, the Zoom edition. This week's guest is a singer, guitarist, songwriter, former DJ, motorcycle enthusiast, and the owner of Air One Productions. His bands include Screecher, Radium, 25 to Life, and 100 Demons. He has performed in over 40 countries and interviewed and performed with some of the biggest names in metal and hardcore. His latest single is entitled "Let's Effing Ride." That must be the radio edit. Please welcome to the corner, Mike D. Livingston. How are you, Mike?
What's up?
Not too much. Good to talk to you.
You bet, brother. Good to see you.
So, as I said, you have a song called "Please" or "Let's Effing Ride." I'm guessing that's the radio edit. Tell everybody what the real song is.
Well, it's called "Let's Fucking Ride." You know?
All right. We are uncensored here on the Claw's Corner.
Awesome. Well, that's great because, you mentioned I was a DJ, and when I was a DJ at NHU, the censorship thing happened, and I pushed the boundaries so much that I refused to stop playing records with swears until I got the FCC removal letter, and I got removed like Howard Stern in the middle of the week when they didn't let me do a last show. I got removed by the FCC. Yeah, it was pretty serious. But so the truth is, if I tried to release a single called "Let's Fucking Ride" back then, wouldn't have. Like, I would have released "Let's Effing Ride" for everybody, and I would have had this secret one. It would have been fun. But my executive producer, who's in charge of a lot of getting this whole project together, we were talking about which one we're going to release, and I was like, well, let's release "Let's Effing That." He's like, nah, dude, we got to release "Let's Fucking Ride." He's like, exactly. Has to be like, and it's honestly like, I give him credit for that because he's like, you know what, you're right. It's 2020. Most things are on the internet. There's no censorship in a lot of areas. And, so I'm so glad he did because, but at the same time, I'm real happy that in the studio and with the video editor, I asked them both to do a clean and dirty version because, it would be nice to get on maybe some commercial hard rock stations that can't use the swear, or even in the other one, I'd love like some biker enthusiasts, or musicians to be able to let their young kids listen to my song, let them listen to the "Let's Effin" version, and I'm good. I'm happy to know that could open up other people, that aren't old enough to hear the word yet, shall we say? Because it's my terms in 2020. I'm releasing the fucking, and I decided I wanted a clean one. It wasn't the other way around.
Well, you know what? It's almost like the 70s and 80s when they had the movie and then they had the TV edit. So this is the TV or radio, or sometimes, as you were a DJ, they would have the radio edit.
Yes, sir.
So you know what? I've been listening to it on iTunes. I think I listened to it 5 or 6 times just today alone. I had it on rotation. I love that song. I cannot get enough of it.
Thanks so much.
Great.
Thanks so much, brother. I really appreciate that. I worked on it for a good part of all last year, really. And, I did a demo version of my home studio, did all the pre-production, wrote all the parts. You programmed the drums to write it. And then ultimately, it came around with Opus. I was just going to record with him, and I wasn't sure how I was going to record. I was going to record it myself, but I started jamming the song with him, and he was going into the studio with Nick Belmore at Dexter's Lab, and he said, why don't you just come in with me? I'll track the song for you there. And, and I did. He tracked the song in a session where he was just doing some drums, and then I went in and finished everything, and then long story short, I really wanted to see if Zeus would be up for mixing and mastering it because I did get to work with Zeus when I was in 100 Demons and record 2 songs with him that we released back on our MySpace, the 100 Demons MySpace pages.
Oh my God.
That's where we released those 2 songs. But
that would be, just interrupts you, but that would be for people who are not musicians. Christopher Zeus Harris, he's a producer.
Yes, sir. Yes, the big time Planet Z, and he's worked with a lot of the best. Hate Breach, Shadows Fall, Queensryche, Agnostic Front, Municipal Waste, 100 Demons, the list goes on. So when I got a chance to work with him for a couple songs, I really was hoping he would be up for mixing the song, and lo and behold, he was. And not only was he up for mixing it, when he finished it, I heard he actually had a really great time mixing it, is what he said, and he offered to continue to work with me. So that I can't ask for anything more, and he nailed it. But Nick from Dexter's Lab really recorded such amazing tracks and did such a great job on the engineering, and they work on projects together all the time, working on Hatebreed records and whatnot. Nick, playing with Dee Snider and Josta. So there's a lot of history there with those guys, and you know, I have my own home recording studios. I've been Prince myself, or inspired by Prince to play everything. But you know what? When I recorded this song, I really wanted to just hire the best out there in the business that I had access to from that I knew, and that's really how that all happened. You know, that's how it all came together. But it was really working on a song for about a year in the culmination. And I was only lucky enough to get that video out before the whole COVID mask and
Thank God.
limit. Yeah, we did that literally on the Sunday. That was the day before the governor had the first social distancing limits on on groups. And I called the director on a Saturday night around 7 o'clock, and I said, Edwin, are you available tomorrow? Let's just bang out a video with us riding. And he agreed. And as soon as he agreed, 6 or 7 other people called him in the universe, all had the idea, but they had it after I did that night, and he agreed to do my video. So we banged that out before all this COVID, because after that COVID thing, he couldn't legally do any shoots anywhere, and he wouldn't. So I got the last video shoot out of world-renowned director Edwin Escobar, and I'm so happy. He's from Bridgeport, but he's international, and he does a lot of good work. And so yeah, you know, that's my story of how this all came together with the help of a lot of people. You know, my executive producer Jay Reason, you might know him from Voice of Reason, the singer from Voice of Reason, but a lot of people might know him better for he ran Stillborn Records with Jamie Josta back in the day, and Jay was the guy that when Jamie was busy, you know, Hatebreed becoming one of the biggest bands in the world, Jay was doing a lot of the work and doing the covers, and so Jay became my label manager for Ear One Productions. And to this day, you know, me and Jay are good friends. I met him when he was about, you know, like, I don't know, about, you know, 5.5 feet tall, and he stepped into a microphone for the first time in his life in my home studio and recorded with the band. And since that day, me and Jay Reason have been friends, and he's my executive producer on this project. And yeah, so those are all the people behind me, man. It's not just me.
Got some great people.
And Opus on drums, come on. You got the world-renowned Opus, because he's not just Opus, my friend from high school days. I mean, he's Opus, the world-class, you know, Dead by Wednesday.
Oh, yeah. Dead by Wednesday. We had him as a guest last week. You can watch it on my YouTube channel. Yeah, he's Dead by Wednesday, David Ellefson.
Absolutely.
I mean, so many great bands. Gargantua Soul.
Oh,
and
God,
actually, you brought up a great point about, you know, I was thinking about the music scene in Connecticut is almost like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, because Opus was talking about Nikki Bellmore. You're talking about working with Hateware with Jamie Josta. You're talking about that. It seems like everybody, I love the fact that the music scene in Connecticut, or anyway, the local scene, it seems like a lot of the bands are there to help each other. They have each other's back, and they're all out there trying to do the same thing. There's not really a lot of competition with the friendly bands. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of competitions. I've been in bands, I've been in radio, I've done other things in comedy, and I know what the competition's like. But
there's friends, and then there's people that want to congratulate, but they hate. You know, it's like, don't hate, congratulate. You know, but But I got 2 quick little stories about Jamie and Opus. You know, when I first met Jamie, Jamie was a short little kid hanging around with Ziggy and all these New Haven punks and metalheads, and he used to come see Screecher and these, you know, like Black Witch and like. And I remember years later meeting Jamie, and I was like, oh yeah, that's that little kid with the hat. He used to fucking come around and see all, you know, like, honestly, he was a great kid. He used to come around, and I got to give him almost all of my credit for me getting into the business with the bands, because he sent me an email asking me if my band Drained of Life wanted to open up for 25 to Life at the Globe in Norwalk. That was with 25 to Life, Bury Your Dead, 1,000 Falling Skies, and us. And
what year was this?
Oh man, this is probably 2002-ish. Yeah. Okay. So sent me the email, and then Jay sent me a phone call. So I said, yeah, hell yeah, we want to open up for those guys. So Drain of Life went and opened up. Sure enough, Rick to Life saw me play guitar. He comes, pulls me over. He's like, yo, nigga. He's like, yo, man, we're doing this European tour. We can use a kick-ass guitar player like you, yo. Let me know if you're down, yo. And he gave me all this like ghetto talk, and I didn't know if he was serious, yo. Like, I was like, this guy's kind of out of his mind. So, he got my email, and then he sent me an email message asking me if my passport was in order and all. And I was like, and he sent me all the European tour dates for 25 to Life, and I was like, wow, he was still talking in ghetto talk in the email, but don't get me wrong. But I could tell he was serious. He wasn't offering me any money. He was kind of like the socialism of hardcore. He said you can come on tour and you won't have to pay for anything and you'll travel for free. And honestly, that's what it was. Like, he didn't pay us any money for play, but whenever we needed to eat or whatever, he would totally pay us.
Yeah, I sort of understand that, because in the very beginning, that's a good way to get your name out there. and let people know who you are, and then next time you can have a paying tour.
So that's my story about Jamie Josta. From when he was really young, he used to come see my bands. But when my band opened up for Drained of Life, my Drained of Life opened up for 25 to Life, and Rick pulled me aside. That's when I got to join 25 to Life for a year, touring the world, 5 or 6 tour U.S. and European tours, and then right when that was done, I came home to find out that 100 Demons was looking for my phone number because their guitar player worked too much, and after releasing the record he really couldn't tour, so they needed a guy. And I was the guy at 25 to Life wearing all the 100 Demons gear. I seriously, that's what's crazy. Here's my story, Rich. I'm not even lying to you. At the moment when I got the phone call, the 100 Demons needed a lead guitar player. They were my favorite band in the entire world at that moment, because that record, the 100 Demons record with the demon, that my bass player from Drain of Life, Lou Jacques, did the artwork for. The self-titled Demon record, that when I first heard that, and the first one's amazing too, but when I heard that one, I was like, I thought Hatebreed was the ultimate crossover hardcore metal. When I heard 100 Demons with the solos and everything, I was like, whoa, that's the ultimate crossover of hardcore metal I've ever heard in my life. And at that split moment, I got a phone call to join my favorite band in the world at the moment, when they released that record, and I got to join. I didn't even know if that was going to be in the video. They called me the night before they recorded their video, the Filthy Ox in Waterbury, with
Morrissey. Phil Gugliotti.
And Bubba calls me the night before. I was just going to go be in the video, like a guy in the video moshing in the bar. Bubba calls me the night before. I said, yo, man, bring your guitar. We're going to need you to be in the video, too. I was like, damn, really? Okay. So the night before I learned I was going to be in an MTV video, I came down and brought my gear, and that's history. We did it with the Filthy Ox. All the Diablos are riding down the street, and we're jamming out in the Diablos bar, hardcore show in a biker bar. It's crazy because I was in that video, and that was like hardcore and metal and bikes and bikers. That's the most anyone ever saw that before. Now, like when I do this song here, it's not any accident really that, I became part of the biker community, and just those are my kind of people, man. Just outlaws, rebels, bikers, musicians, the free thinkers. That's my people, and so I was really lucky with those guys, to be able to do that with them. But that's all because of Jamie Josta, because Jamie Josta called me and asked me if Drain of Life wants to open up for 25 to Life. I play and tour 25 to Life. 100 Demons needs a guy. I'm like seasoned tour the world with 25 to Life hardcore guy already. So when I auditioned, I just went in and I nailed it. I wanted it, and I played with them for 4 years in 40 countries and was in the repeat process video, recorded with Zeus, the whole 9 yards. And, I'm still friends with every single one of those. Best times of my life. They still tour to this day with all the original members back again, but they just fly here and there for a festival here, they just do it for fun. And I go see them when I can and have fun. And I still stay in touch with a lot of the guys in the bands big time. So
I have a funny story about that because I'm friends with 2 of them. I'm friends with Pete Morrissey, who used to be in Force Reality. I'm also friends with Rich Rosa, the drummer.
Yes.
Rich Rosa went to the same high school as me, and his 8th grade graduation, he needed a band. I sang, my brother Brian played guitar, and we played his 8th grade graduation. So I actually got to tour or play with 100 Demons in Rich Rose's backyard in 8th grade.
That's awesome. That is great. Yeah, no, Rich is amazing, man. Rich, I had so much fun, with those guys. And I'll tell you, Rich and Pete, 100 Demons is a tough guy hardcore band. We know know all of them. There's a bunch of them, Death Before Dishonor. Let me tell you, I toured with 100 Demons with all the toughest of tough guy hardcore bands. Rich and Pete are probably the 2 toughest guys in hardcore, because when we toured with the tough guys and it was time for shenanigans and just going crazy and smashing stuff for fun, let me tell you, Pete and Rich were, I can tell you awesome stories for days, just having so much fun with those guys, raging across Europe in a tour bus with 100 Demons and Sworn Enemy in one tour bus for 6 weeks.
That's a party.
All across Europe. But that was the pinnacle of touring there. For me, it was the only time it was ever in a tour bus, was that for that. All the other tours were in those Mercedes vans that hold the band and the gear in Europe. But that was the one tour with Sworn Enemy where I actually toured in a tour bus.
Now, you said you played 40 countries. What are some of the countries you performed in?
Oh God, like a lot of the ones the ones you would think have played a lot in Germany, France, England, Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, Sweden, just throughout all of Europe. But then 100 Demons got over pretty far eastern. We got all the way over to Slovenia, and
Wow.
we even played in what is Serbia now. But when we played, it was the capital of Yugoslavia. It's now Serbia, because it split from the Serbs and the Croats, and now it's Serbia and Croatia. But when we played, it was, it was pretty interesting. It was pretty interesting how we and when we drove into that country, you saw the bombed out buildings that that the U.S. when Clinton was in, we bombed Slobodan Milosevic out of that country. We drove past hundreds and hundreds of bombed buildings on our way into Serbia. Because that was afterwards or whatnot. But so we've played, some of the more interesting places. Let's see, we played in Greece. That was amazing. Played right in downtown Athens. Got to go see the Parthenon, all that fun stuff. Let's see, Mexico is great. Like Tijuana.
You played pretty much everywhere. It sounds like.
Yeah, almost. With Scotland's great. One of my favorite places to play, honestly, Poland. Poland has the most amazing metal fans because we played in these neighborhoods that are so poor that they save up just for a ticket to see or to buy your CD, and they really appreciate it. Poland is great.
Well, I think you answered a question I was going to ask you, because I talked to a lot of people who are in metal bands that maybe lost the luster in the U.S. They go overseas and they love them. It seems like metal is very, very popular overseas, and maybe you just explained perhaps that they're so poor, they save up their money, and that's a huge thing for them. In America, people are more complacent, like, yeah, all right, yeah, hurry up and press me.
They have a lot of choices and more ready cash and access to things, and we take it for granted. But when you go to a country and you realize you are playing for kids that really don't have a lot, so you give them a lot more respect. It's funny because in Poland they have this thing that they like to come on stage, right on stage, and bang their heads and do air guitar in front of you. If that happened here, you'd probably be inclined to want to kick the jerk out because he's probably just looking for attention. But in Poland, it's a tradition. So you actually tolerate it, and they do this thing where you have to be careful because they hang around the sides of the stage in a hardcore show, and they'll just randomly come behind a guitar player and like pick him up and carry him in the crowd. Well, guess who they did it to? They did it to Bubba, and they actually picked him up. They picked him up. Like, so Bubba's playing on this small club, but they come behind him and they just pick him up, and you go along with it because it's the Polish kids showing how they love you. So here's
I would love it.
Carried in the crowd by these Polish kids, and so the Polish kids are a lot of fun.
The problem with me, if they were trying to do that when I was in bands, they would have to try and catch me because I was usually in the audience half the show anyway, moshing around with my straitjacket or my Dino. We had the song "Death to Dino."
Oh, that's right, man. Speaking of the old days, man, R.I.P., man. Great stuff. We had a lot of great shows. Going to see shows with you guys at the Brickwood and Sonic Plague, and
you know what? I want to go back to that because you are the reason I had my first show. I first met you when you were a DJ. You used to interview me, WNHU, you and Vicky.
Yes,
Vicky was the other DJ.
Yep.
And there was a band called Black Witch. Then you joined them, and they sort of formed with them and renamed it Screecher. Why was that?
What happened was I found Black Witch when I was at NHU, and they were just a three-piece. And Ronnie became a three-piece because they were a four-piece, and the drummer left. So Ronnie was just the singer originally. So when their drummer left in Black Witch, he just started playing the drums but still singing, and they were a three-piece. So when I started producing them in the studio, we had to record live. So I just added my guitar live with the other guitar player, so it sounded like with two tracks. So I already played on the first demos, like this double tracking the guitars. But then when they played live, when we opened up for Celtic Frost and Voivod at Sneakers, I actually
Bramford.
I played most of that set with them.
Okay.
So what happened was at some point the band wanted to evolve. So Ronnie wanted to jump out and just sing. So we got a drummer. We got this guy, Chris Delvecchio, who used to play with a band called Necromancy way back in the day. Mm-hmm. and Ronnie went out front, and the plan was for me to now join the band as an official guy with Rob D'Antonio
Yes.
and John Whitteman. So now Black Witch went from a three-piece to a five-piece with Ronnie jumping out and just singing. And we decided to change the name because it really was like a different band. Like with the newer songs were like, they were like just crazy. They were like 10-minute songs with 17 different riff changes and the fastest speedcore, deathcore riffs and drum beats you ever heard. And then Ronnie was singing about stuff so evil and death fantasy. When it came to Screecher we got an interview with Mechanics Records. I literally sat down with Steve Sinclair and Holly Lane. You know, Holly Lane started Roadrunner Records when Monty Connor was just a radio guy, and he was my friend, and I would go hang out with Monty Connor. So long story short, you know, they agreed to have an interview with Screecher because they almost signed us. Well, when it came down to it, Holly said the lyrics were so evil and satanic that she had to, because she had to market King Diamond, and she had a lot of trouble with that in certain areas.
Yeah.
And Ronnie's lyrics were really some of the most deadly and deathly fantasies of death and Satanism that people have ever heard in his lyrics. And actually,
well, the funniest thing about that is that Ronnie's probably one of the nicest guys in the world. So quiet, so mellow, and then you read his lyrics like, oh my God, this guy's evil.
Exactly. Mechanics Records, they signed Violence and a couple other bands. You know, they thought we were too much, so we didn't get that record deal. But that's why we changed the name. We changed the name because our first show, we freaked the hell out of everybody. Our first show, we didn't even tell everybody we're changing our name. We didn't tell anybody that we were a five-piece. We pulled this thing where we made it a surprise. So I got a show opening for Nuclear Assault at Baby J's down in Norwalk. Yes. So we advertised that Black Witch was playing. So we wanted our fans to be there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when they got there, it wasn't Black Witch opening, it was Screecher, and that show was so intense. Like it went on late. First of all, they didn't let us go on until 10 o'clock, and the crowd started to chant bullshit. So when we went on, people were just ready to go. People went crazy. We had this riff, you know, Master of Death with this like circle pit part. I never saw like 300, 400 people in a circle pit like ever in my life, to this day in my band, that go so crazy. So our set went so insane that friends that I knew from New Haven, different areas, they're like, dude, I'm going home. I killed myself so bad during your set, I'm leaving. They left before Nuclear Assault because they killed themselves during. I'm not even joking. And when we walked backstage, the manager like almost bowed his head, like, great set, man. Like Dan Looker shook my hand and said, "Oh, amazing set." Like we.
That's funny.
That night, Nuclear Assault was still fucking amazing. No, we didn't blow them away, but we had an amazing show that night. That people didn't know. All of a sudden, they think they're coming to see Black Witch, and they saw Ronnie out front, me on guitar, and so that was a lot of fun. You know.
Well, I will say I didn't go home. I did stay for Nuclear Assault, but I was one of the people in that pit that night.
Nice. Somebody had a bootleg of that, and to this day, I gotta see. Me and Ronnie shared a lot of the videos and bootlegs of the old days. We got together a little while back on sharing that, but yeah, there's some fun stuff there.
And just to let people know, Ronnie's now in a band called Curse the Sun, which is very Black Sabbath influenced. They are great.
Yes.
I love them.
I love those guys. I'm a fan. I go see them as much as possible. Their new videos are awesome. The ones that just got premiered on the Obelisk, and you know, Ronnie's doing a video for every song on that record, and that's a great idea because everything's so visual now. You know, it makes sense to do that, especially now when there's nothing else going on. People are all of a sudden trying to get more visual. So I'm just happy I had everything in place before this happened, because I feel like I have one of the biggest audiences in the history of the internet right now, while everyone's still quarantined, and it's kind of showed a little bit. It's been a good time for people paying attention online. It's just awesome because, you know, the whole COVID thing, it didn't do a damn thing to stop me from releasing a song, and everything's virtual. Like I did not release anything physical in your hand. It's like 2020, but yeah, people worldwide and everywhere have clicked and shared Yeah, it's great. It's like such a new world, but it's awesome. So now I'm getting more into that video world too. Doing a thing with radio. I'm doing a YouTube series called Mike Z's View on 2,
Oh wait, Mike.
where I'm just
There you go.
everything we've
Mike,
been doing, riding, going to see
froze
different
for a
places and
second.
cool restaurants.
You froze for a
Yep.
second. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so one of the new things I'm doing is I just started a new YouTube channel. It's called Mike Z's View on 2, and basically,
For some reason, you keep freezing.
going to different cool scenic spots and restaurants, but we're also going to interview people at the destination, like it may be the chef or the owner of the place we eat, or the manager of the park, or the place we go to. So and then share that content online, just an extension of the old days when I used to interview people, and just bring that, document what we do now. We've been doing it for 5 years, but sharing it online, what we've been doing as like Facebook posts to say, hey, look what we've been doing. But now it's like we're at a different level, and it's great because I want to get to a point, even I'll come back and interview a guy like yourself about everything that you've done up to this point. Between
I have a lot to say. I've been from RIP. I've done bands, comedy. I wrote a book.
Your comedy career is like, epic now. You've done so much. I see so much cool stuff every time you share another person that you've met or talked to, bro. It's just so amazing. It's so cool. It really is.
Well, speaking of that was a great segue, because I wanted to talk to you when you were at WNHU, the DJ. You were like one of the first people to mix hardcore metal in the Northeast. Normally, college radio is not that popular, especially today. Your show is one of the biggest in the state, and you got to meet so many great people. Who are some of the people that you met in the hardcore metal scene?
Oh, wow. I got to meet all my favorite bands of the time. That's the beauty. Everything from on the hardcore side, I got to meet Agnostic Front. They're my favorite hardcore band of all time. I got to become friends with those guys over time from going. And I got to be friends with them to the point where I went to see them with Slapshot and Agnostic Front up at Enfield Roller Rink, and it was all skinheads back then for the those bands. Yep. Me and my long-haired friend came up from to go see it, and none of the skins bought. Usually they would beat some metalheads' asses, for showing up, but we showed up as friends of the band. I was interviewing the guys, and we didn't go in the pit with the skin. We were dumb enough back then in a complete skinhead pit, but that got mixed up a lot more, but so I did get to interview and see guys like the Agnostic Front, Nuclear Assault. I got to meet Billy Milano, when he started at the SOD, and just, a lot of bands on the metal side, doing radio interviews, and then getting to meet guys, like Slayer and King Diamond, and,
wait, let's stop right there, because King Diamond is one of my all-time favorites. I just love Merciful Fate. I love King Diamond. What was he like in person? He seems like he's a very mellow, down-to-earth, very nice guy.
He's so amazing. I have the best story about that. My friend Eric Wilborn, rest in peace.
Disaster.
Eric.
He was in a band called Disaster, bass player.
That's right.
Guy.
People might not know this, but I was friends with Eric very young, teenage years. My first bass was a PVT bass, and he bought it for me for like a couple $100, and I sold him like his first cabinet or something. Me and him go way back. What I was going to say about that is, where was I going to say about that?
We're talking about King Diamond.
Yeah. So long story short, so he was a big King Diamond fan even before I was. And Eric told me, and I don't know if you believe it, he said he told me that King Diamond's phone number was on the back of the Melissa album. I said, get out. If you look on the back of that album, there's a phone number on there. And I'm not kidding you. I called the phone number from the WNHU studios with my cassette deck. And he answers the phone. Hello? I'm like, hello, is King there? Yes, this is King. I'm like, hi.
Oh, no way.
WNHU in Connecticut, my friend Eric told me that he's talked to you. I wonder if you'd be up for an interview. So this is funny. So he talked to me for like 40 minutes. I pulled a cassette out and realized I have the tabs. The tabs were punched in. So can you believe I actually called him back? And I'm like, listen, King, I am so sorry, but the interview I just did with you, it didn't record. Would you talk to me again? And do you know, he fucking talked to me again. And for longer, even longer, because my questions for him were pretty intelligent. Like other people would treat his questions about Satanism. I asked him about that, and he just told me that, yeah, he really is into it, but he's not. Other people, he's not preaching it like that. He's like, if you're into something, that's fine. But he wasn't like, he explained it's not something that it's for him, and he's not trying to say this is for everybody else.
Well, I love what I love about him. Merciful Fate, he was more the Satanist. And King Diamond, he was a great storyteller. Like Abigail, yes. I would love to see that as a movie.
Yes, more like horror stories and whatnot. Yeah. Right? Yeah, yeah, you're right.
And but even Puppet Master, everything, every album he's done as King Diamond later. I mean, I love the Merciful Fate. I love like the Nuns Have No Fun. It's a great song. It's very actually, it's very poppy. It's very catchy.
Yeah, that is. A lot of great riffs. Yeah, I got to see Merciful Fate at Toad's place. I did see with all the original members. Every single one of the guys. Timmy was in the band. Hank. What's his name? The popular guy.
There was Hank Sherman, Timmy G. Hansen, I think, and King Diamond. I'm trying to remember who the drummer was at the time.
Man, yeah, I can't remember now. And the other guitar player, he's in another European rock band now, and I can't even think of the name right now. But anyway, but they that was a great show. But then when I saw King Diamond when he came to West Hartford Ballroom, I did get to meet him in person, and he is an awesome dude. Without his makeup, he's got like a big mustache and beard. Yeah, he wears dark sunglasses all the time. But he's the nicest damn guy, like in person, and to talk to. Like of all the people I've interviewed, like I had an interview scheduled with Wendy O. Williams from the Plasmatics when
I was going to ask you about her,
and she was living in Connecticut, and I've never been so more nervous to interview it, because you've seen her in interviews. She's so punched, she smashes shit, she spits, she looks like she would just punch you in the face.
I love that video with the TV set and the bus.
Yes, absolutely. And she's a Lemmy protege. Lemmy taught her everything she knows. She's like a female singing version of Lemmy. But she was living in Connecticut at the time. The Maggots album was out. She was promoting it. I talked to her. Do you know, as soon as she answered the phone, I'm like, hi, this mic is Wendy there? And she said, oh yeah, hi, this is Wendy O. How you doing? And she was like totally like cheery and pleasant, like the opposite of, because you think you're interviewing the persona,
Yeah.
And everyone has a persona on stage. Everyone acts real tough and rocks out on stage. But when you talk to people, they're a lot of them are just so mellow and real. It's just amazing, and that's great when you get to find that out about people. They don't want to be treated like rock stars. They just want they want to talk about regular shit,
It's a shame about her because she became a veterinarian in Sharon, Connecticut, and she committed suicide.
I know, that's a horrible story. It's tragic, because if she was still around, who knows what she'd be doing still. She's one of those,
I loved her music, and I thought she was a great front woman. She was one of the best front people in the business in metal. I thought she was really good at it.
Absolutely. There was nobody else like her. There's a few now that try, like Jen for Torturers and some other that take it to the extreme. But she was doing all that before everybody else.
Yeah. Well, there's another band that you met. I saw a picture recently on your Facebook, and it's one of my all-time favorites. Again, is Possessed. I loved.
Yes.
And Larry Lalonde is now in the band Primus.
Yes.
Vaquero, the bass player and singer, unfortunately, he was shot in the back, and now he's paralyzed.
Right, and he still performs with the band, and they tour. Yeah. They put out a new record. I'm friends with those guys on Facebook, so I follow what he does, and that's just amazing that he's still rocking out with the band. He's in the chair on stage, but who cares? Nobody cares. When they play. But they were the nicest guys. I met them when they played up in Montreal. It was the No Speed Limit Weekend Thrash Festival at the Forum in Montreal. And it was Voivod headlining Friday and Saturday night. And then on each night, some of the other bands that opened up were Sacrifice. I got to hang out and party with all those bands. I got an invitation from Metal Maria, who was at that festival. Yeah.
You made a lot of great connections being a college DJ. That's the point I wanted to make, because I did college radio, WFCS at Central, and I didn't meet anybody. You're over there interviewing Slayer, Possessed. Did you ever meet Metallica at the time?
You know what? I did meet Metallica, but when I met Metallica, it was right after Cliff had died.
Okay.
So me meeting Metallica was I got to do an interview with Jason Newsted of Metallica. And when I walked backstage, they played at the West Hartford Ballroom. I think it was like with Metal Church and Warlock or something.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, and that's when I finally got to do my interview with Metallica. But it was with Jason because the guys weren't doing interviews because they were still upset about Cliff. I walked right by James Hetfield, past him to go do my interview, and he's like 8 feet tall. It's like I'm looking up at him, like, you know, he's like a foot and a half taller than me. It feels like he's a big guy, you know. But like, or at least back then, he feel like he was a big guy, you know. But so I did my interview with Jason Newsted, and it's amazing, you know. He was an official guy in Metallica, and he gave me all the you know, it was cool because I got to ask him questions about Flotsam and Jetsam too, and how to that, and he was a great guy, and I got my WNHU IDs from Metallica, you know, the one I can still hear it in my head. Hi, this is Jason Newsted from Metallica, and you're listening to Mikey Z on WNHU. You know, it's like, you know, what the hell world did I live in? Or the Slayer promo IDs for WHU were amazing. I was backstage at West Hartford Ballroom interviewing Slayer and interviewing Tom Araya, and there was a bullhorn nearby. So he grabbed the bullhorn and he did a promo for the promo was Tom Araya, and he goes, "Hi, this is Mr. Bullhorn, and you're listening on 88.7 WNHU," and it's Tom Araya talking through a bullhorn. You know, it's like
he has a great sense. I've never met him or talked to him. I've seen him on stage.
Oh, he's awesome.
He's having so much fun on stage.
He's the funny family guy in the band. Like, he's the coolest guy to approach and talk to.
Yeah.
So is Dave Lombardo is the most mellow surfer guy. He's even more easy to approach. He's like so easygoing.
Well, the funniest thing about him is that he quit the band several times. I guess I don't know what kind of issues he had with the band, but
he did. When I interviewed Tom Araya, Dave was actually hanging out with Overkill downstairs in Overkill's dressing room most of the time, to be on that tour. Yeah. And that's the times you're talking of when their relationship was rocky, but he was still in the band. But yeah, great guy. So those are on the, you know, going back to what you said, you know, I've been really lucky to interview a lot of those bands, you know, from NHU and
how did you have access to that? I'm just curious.
Megadeth too. Well, from working at NHU, I became the music director, and you would just you would get a hold of their publicists.
Okay.
So back then, publicists handled all press for everything. I was a legitimate radio station, so I would just call these people and set up the interviews. And it got even further because, yeah, I booked and promoted Megadeth's first 3 shows in Connecticut. I either booked or promoted. The very first Megadeth show was at the Keg House in New Haven near Southern. It was on the first, you know, the first album, and they were touring in a camper, a tiny camper. Then I booked them at Sneakers.
Yeah, wait. I can tell you right now, King Diamond, Blessed Death, and Megadeth. I was there.
And Megadeth opened up there or whatever, yes. Right?
I remember still so clearly Dave Mustaine saying, had this new song, it's not released yet, it's called Peace Sells, but Who's Buying? So that's how it was 1986. Yes.
Isn't that amazing? So then by the third time Megadeth came to Connecticut, they were on Capitol Records with Peace Sells, and not only did I get to introduce them on stage at the West Hartford Ballroom, Capitol Records gave me a box of 300 Megadeth pins. And it was these little packs that had a white and a black Megadeth pin, the opposite of each with Vic Rattlehead on the pins. So I literally got to walk past Dave Mustaine on stage. Hey guys, how you doing? You ready? You ready for Megadeth? Yeah. You want some pins? Yeah. And I threw these pins out at everybody. All right, now let's hear it. I said, combat recording artist Megadeth. I walked by and Dave's like, we're on Capitol now, but it's okay. I was so nervous. I said combat recording artist. And
that's
here they
funny.
Capitol Records. Like, I was like, it was so great. He
from
took
K-Tel Records, Megadeth.
Oh my, K-Tel Records. Holy shit. You know, remember when K-Tel Records came, they signed Venom. Dude, K-Tel Records used to sell all those stupid records in the 70s. The guy that owned it was a metalhead. He used to break my balls and call me at the station. I had to tell him to stop calling me. He would call me at home, but he released a Venom record on K-Tel. Go look it up. There's
that's
a Venom
hilarious.
And that's the real K-Tel Records. That they used to do all like the 70s, like, you know, like compilations, all those crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, but yeah,
That's
Kate,
funny.
but
Well,
yeah,
speaking of
man.
Megadeth, David Ellefson, the bass player, and he also has his own band who plays with former guest Opus. He's going
Yes,
to be on the show sometime soon. I just got in contact with
awesome.
his manager or his partner, Tom, and they're going to be on the show.
Also one of the nicest guys in the business. You know,
Yes.
like I got to meet him back in the day, but I got to re-say hello when he first did his first appearance with Opus when they did the bass story tour, and they played up at the
Angry Chair.
Angry Chair, yes. And I did sound, and I got to meet and talk to Dave. And then he came back when they played at when he did the spoken performance, the book signing at Strangeland Emporium. I got to talk to him again and get a picture again. But yeah, super nice guy. You know, good for him. Say hello to him from me, please. Say Mike Z, the guy that booked your first 3 shows and met you again recently, says hello, because I love that guy. He's just a great dude.
I most definitely will. But let's get on to your career, because you have done so much in your career. Besides helping, well, the whole reason this whole conversation started was your band Screecher let my band, RIP, open up at the Bricken. Was me, your band, CFI, and Disaster.
Yes.
At the Bricken was such a fun show, but you did so much for the local bands as well. I didn't have a demo out, but you're like, hey, Rich, don't worry about it. Come on, do like 5 or 6 songs. We got a chance to play.
Yeah,
After Screecher, I remember you went to Radium. What happened with Screecher? Why'd you leave them to go to Radium?
Well, Screecher ultimately split up, honestly, because the musical direction started getting a little different, you know?
Yeah.
Rob, what honestly started happening is where the guitar player Rob, he started getting into like a lot of different music, not really the heavy thrash and death metal. He was more into like the guitar shredding style of metal, you know? And then, you know, when we didn't get signed and things didn't really work out, there was sort of like this point where the guys in the band needed to split up, you know? Ronnie wanted to keep the band going himself. You know, what ended up happening was I left the band and started a new band with Rob, and that was Radium. You know, so that's what happened. It wasn't like animosity, like there was a big fight or anything. It just didn't work out. You know, Ronnie wanted to keep it going, you know, and in a different direction, and so yeah. So we split, and that's how Radium started, and absolutely, you know, and I'm still friends with Ronnie to this day. You know, it's good to see him still going strong. You know, I still talk to Rob D'Antonio.
Yep.
But
I have a funny story about Rob, because say 15, 16 years later, I'm a manager at a retail store. I have my suit and tie on, and this guy walks in. He's a representative, and we're looking at each other, and the guy goes, Rich Cyr? And it was Rob D'Antonio. I said, wait a minute. It was funny. We both were, you know, now we're like in the business world looking completely different. And he recognized me by my face, but it was funny. He sees me in my suit and tie, and I said, yeah, how are you doing?
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's great, man. Rob's awesome. But yeah, no, man, you guys are RIP, Skeletal Ambitions, you know, Sons of Sawyer. You know, we could keep going. You know, there was Disaster. There
CFI.
Was CFO. Yeah, I mean, and you know, those are all my favorite bands, you know, because when you're one of the bands from a different scene, like you have your favorite bands from the scene, and you guys were like all my favorite, you know, like when, you know what I mean? Like that was it. I loved RIP, you know, like the demo you guys put on CFI and, you know, Crush Forming a lot, Inoculation, you know, just every, you know, and I was lucky enough too, you know, and with Eric, you know, growing up with Eric and Disaster, you know, and, you know, also I was lucky enough to record after CFI split and years later, Steve and Brady started a band called Chinks with Bob Mikulak on drums. And
Bob Mikulak was in a band called Schizo at the time.
Yes. So I was lucky enough to record that in my home studio. Okay. And it's some of the most awesome stuff ever, because the bass sound for that was my tiny PV amp put in my closet with a distortion box, the mic put into the closet, shutting the door of the closet, cranking it, and then Brady in my other room in the studio. And that is it sounds like Lemmy times 10. It's a distorted, because he played a Rickenbacker, but that sound we got was one of the best sounds ever. And they were some of the fastest punk that had the heaviest metal guitars. Like, it was punk through and through, fast thrashing punk, but those guitars and the vocals were punkish, but the guitars were so heavy and hard. You know, just Steve's guitar sound. I had a Les Paul and a Marshall or something, I think, back in the day, and you know, just I was real lucky to be able to record those guys, and rest in peace. You know, it's
yeah. Unfortunately, both of them.
we're talking about three guys that I loved. You know, we're talking about Eric Wilborn, we're talking about Brady, and we're talking about Steve.
Yeah, they were both from CFI, and Brady was actually in Sons of Sawyer as well. So
right, and they were both Kinks, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, again, to go back, what I loved about being in the band scene at that time, anyway, you can tell me how it is different from then. I love the camaraderie, first of all, but second of all, there were so many clubs that allowed original music, and they embraced it. Now it's more like play some cover songs. We want people like to get drunk and hear something that they're familiar with.
Yeah, no, everything's so different, and you know, what was great is the scene back in the day. It was like the most popular scene, and every kid was into it back then. You were either into metal or hardcore. Everybody was into it. It was such a huge scene, but it was a small, huge scene. Yeah. Nowadays, you know, think about, there was only so many local bands back then that were actually out and playing and that you liked. I mean, you could count them. You know, there's maybe like 50 bands that are amazing, you know, that you would say that you knew in the state. You know, now, like, I run a site just called Connecticut Hardcore Fans. And one of my first projects was to have everybody help me on that site list every Connecticut hardcore band ever on the list. I'm pretty sure I added RIP to it at some point. But if not, I will. But we came up with about 250 Connecticut hardcore bands. And they were all legitimate bands that everybody had, you know, posted. And it got to the point where I didn't even have enough to list them in the 2,000 word limit because it was put in a post. So the rest of them had to be listed in comments on that post anymore that people forgot. But, you know, now there's just so many bands and so many genres. Here we are 30 years later. There are literally millions of bands in the world. When we were like 30 years ago, there was only tens of thousands of bands, you know, of what we know, the heavy stuff. Now there's probably 500 genres and millions of bands, but they're all segmented and have their own little scenes and everything. So, you know, it's time to bring that back where people work together. You know, there are certain people in the scene that work together, help each other out, and it works great. Me and Opus are like that. I've been helping him since he was really short, and he was in a band called Sapphire, and I produced their first demo. And then
that's when I first met him.
And then became Violent Industry, you know, and I helped him, you know, and steer him in directions. I was their sound man for you know, over the years, me and Opus, we ended up being in a band called Smoke the Prophet together. You know,
I wanted to talk to you about that. Yeah. When was that?
That was in the 90s. You know, that was like around 90. You know, I want to say around 95 or so. You know, 95 we started that. And it's
were you the guitarist and singer?
Well, no, you know how it started? This is literally how Smoke the Prophet started. Opus had some acoustic stuff he needed to record in my home studio. So I started recording it with him. And then he wanted to get a gig playing at one of the Longshot and Victory giant metal showcases at Toads that started to become huge with the local bands playing. They started to get like 700, 800 people at those local shows at the time, and Opus wanted to open up. So he was recording some stuff. He's like, hey, would you come just play some backing tracks for me live on stage? And I said, okay, yeah, if you would let me and Scott come and let Scott bring his congas and bring his guitar, and we could do a couple of our acoustic songs with Atmosphere, because we had Atmosphere at the time, but we had this acoustic stuff. And he said, okay, so it became me, Scott, and Opus, and we didn't have a name. So, you know, it was like, serious, like a bunch of pot smoking musicians sitting around smoking some weed. And it's like, oh man, what are we going to call the name of the band? I don't know, man. Like, what? It was a joke, like, watch out, man, you're going to smoke all your profits. Or, yeah. And like, I was like, yeah, man, we'll call it Smoke the Prophet. And I said, well, we'll spell it like prophet, you know, like oracle. And like, yeah, and I was joking, but the guys like actually thought it was a good idea. So we had to give him a name, so we gave him Smoke the Prophet. And over the years, Smoke the Prophet was around for 10 years. We had a crazy history. It ended up being a 8-piece band with a drummer, 2 percussionists, keyboards, 2 guitars, bass. Yeah, it turned into, and Opus left the band because he had joined Gargantua Soul.
Okay.
So he split off at some point, and me and Scott just finished Smoke the Prophet, and then Gargantuan Soul was cranking, Atmospheres cranking in the 90s, with the local scene. And I produce a bunch of Gargantuan Soul songs too in my home studio for those guys. So me and Opus, we go way back, from his very first demo. When they showed up, I was working at Bradley's in the electronic section, and these kids show up from Guilford High School because they'd heard my show on NHU and like, hey man, would you help us out, man? Like, we make it. All right, sure, man. Why not? Because I don't know. I think I might have done it for Blackwitch already or something. I'm not sure, but they heard about me and they came and courted me at Bradley's while I was standing behind the counter selling Zelda and air conditioners. But anyway,
That's funny.
I love those guys, man. I know so many people through the scene, just from the old days and now that are still doing it. I'm still meeting people from the scene. I met a guy recently in the last few years through the community, Jay Piccirillo. He's the unofficial mayor of Bridgeport. He does tons of charities, owns Michelizzi's Ice, does a huge fireworks scene. And he used to play in a band called Crossover back in the day. And, when I re-met Jay recently, he's like, the first time I heard Metallica was on your radio show, and
Wow.
We became friends. We weren't even friends back then, but we became friends in the last 5 years or so. And now he's one of my best friends. I actually, this is a little secret. I'm not going to tell everybody what's going on, but I just
wait 1 second.
I just worked
Claus
on
Corner exclusive.
Yeah, all right, we'll give it to you because I'm officially working on the crossover demo Painkiller
Right.
with Jay right now in works and with doing something with it. I won't say what, but we're actually going to be doing something. We're going to be reviving one of those awesome bands from that scene from 30 years ago and doing some fun stuff. So get ready. That's some fun stuff that's going to start happening. And there might be, I might do it with my own bands that I haven't even done yet. Just try to revive some stuff, so there's some projects in the works, and I'm going to be recording another song in the next 3 months with another video. I'm hoping to have another song and video in 3 months, and then from 6 months, a third one. So by the end of the year, I have 3 videos because I got a Vivo channel. I don't just have my YouTube channel. I actually got signed into a Vivo channel. So as soon as I have 3 videos, I can reach a higher level of platform where I can share YouTube and Vivo all over the place. And they're actually, they're working on stuff right now where I'll be able to take advantage of that. But my video is actually being distributed and serviced through Vivo.
Right.
But you can see it on the YouTube version when it was published by Vivo. It makes a YouTube version. But I'm going to get my Vivo channel going after all this, dies down with because as you know, bravewords.com premiered the video today, and they did an amazing job. And I love those guys. I respect them. To me, they're one of the biggest online metal entities, and I was hoping that somebody like them would take notice and release my story. And not only did they do the premiere today, but they really hooked it up because of the cause that's connected with my friend Frank that got killed by a drunk driver. And we dedicate the video to him. He's one of our riding crew, and there's a dedication to him at the end. But Brave Words really. Well,
wait, let's talk about that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to say that's what the song is about. Let's effing ride.
Well, let's fucking ride. It's a song about riding with your friends, the fun of riding with your friends. But it's about our riding group of friends. We started riding together. It kind of started, I had all these metalhead friends from different areas of the state that started riding. We went from playing, as we got older, we started getting into like these adult things like guns and motorcycles. So like I started like bonding with all my metalhead friends, going and shooting and riding motorcycles now. So just like I bring people together, like I'm a uniter, I'm not a divider. I hate people who are dividers. That's why I hate politics. Politics divides by nature. But I always brought people together, and that's something, not now, that I'm trying to do, as well, So so basically, the fact that I was able to take guys from this area like Ronnie's Celentano, started riding. My friend Mike Bernardi over here. Then over in North Branford, these guys Ruick at True Ink Tattoo. My friend Buck was riding. So I said, hey guys, why don't we all get together one day? I'll meet up at the tattoo shop for a ride. So we did. We went out to the upper deck in Old Lyme, you know, and we had lunch. And just by a fluke, I took a group picture of all of us, you know, and that became a thing because right after we took that picture, Mike started a page called Let's Effin' Ride, where we could all meet up and connect and use the page. And then I started taking pictures of every ride and a group picture every time we took a ride, and that became a tradition. And the Let's Effin' Ride, it sort of became, it was like a crew, not an official crew, but you know, we have shirts. The shirt I'm wearing right now, that's LFR. Okay. This is the third. This is a you can't see. I mean, maybe you can't see, but
stand up a little bit. There you go.
There it is. That's LFR. Let's fucking ride. That's a Thor hammer to honor, you know, because we're supporters of 81 and other clubs in Connecticut, and we honor them. But that's LFR is Let's Effin' Ride. On the back of the shirt, I could show you, but I can't really stand up. It says ride to eat, eat to ride.
Very nice.
We go into places and we have lunch and we eat and then we go see some scenic stuff. It's like kind of what we're known for, but we're just like a t-shirt crew. We're not trying to be we're not an MC. We're not a riding club at all. But I am friends with many motorcycle clubs, and I'm a big supporter of all the major, you know, 1%er clubs in my area. I give respect. I support events, and I am part of the biker community. And that's just happened by going out and riding with people, you know, for the last 7 years now, I've become part of the biker community. You know, so the fact that I brought these guys all together, it became this crew. And then there was a guy called Furnace Frank, who he was kind of our leader most of the time because he knew the roads like anybody, and he used to ride with all these clubs. So he was like, you know, he was our road captain. We'd follow him everywhere. And he was called Full Throttle Frank because he liked to really, a lot of times if he got tired of us just like, he would just hit the throttle and go way ahead of us, chill for a while and wait for us to catch up. So we all learned to try to keep up with Frank, you know, and that was us learning what it's like, you know, once in a while to push the limit, you know, hit the throttle without being stupid and not safe, you know. But we did he taught us how to really ride to live, and he lived every day like it was his last, and he taught us to kind of live like that. And because his name was Full Throttle Frank, you know, there was another sort of crew. There was another crew. The crew that would follow Frank around was called the Full Throttle Crew. So really, the Let's Effin' Ride crew and the Full Throttle Crew are a lot of the same guys, but just with a little different factions going on. So my tribute in the song, Let's Fucking Ride, is a tribute really to the original crew called Let's Effin' Ride and Full Throttle Frank as well. So it's a tribute to all the crews that became riding crews and brothers and groups, shall we call, and to sum it all up in one song. So Frank and all of my riding friends and anybody that inspired me to get into motorcycling is definitely inspired me to write that song. So yeah, the song itself, you listen to it, it's nothing about just the freedom and fun of riding, you know, but it's fun, it's happy, but you know, it takes fun seriously. You know, it's about taking fun seriously, but having fun taking it seriously. And you know, being a free thinker, and you know, that's all. You know,
I love that. And this kicked off your solo career, right?
What's that?
I said, and this also kicked off your solo career.
It's crazy because literally I've been playing in all these local bands and these touring, you know, hardcore metal bands. But here I am, a 54-year-old man, releasing my first solo single and video, and I'm literally a new artist in 2020. So it's kind of wild. I'm kind of glad I waited this long, because I always, you know, we always thought when you're older, you're not going to be able to keep going. I mean, look at Keith Richards. We still be where Keith Richards is at 80. You know, I'm at 54. You know, hell, I think I say I like 26 more years to go. But no, so it's kind of interesting because, you know, some people get to my age and you just give up, you know, other things in life become more important, your family, and I don't even blame them because you just take, you know, other priorities. And in my case, you know, I found out that Leonard Cohen, I always thought Leonard Cohen was around for a long, long time. You know, this old school guy, you thought he was around forever. I worked a show for him at Oakdale. I found Leonard Cohen didn't start his career too is 50 years old.
Wow.
But yet he had a career from about 50 to 70 something that we all know about. But yet we think Leonard Cohen was just making records and known. But no, he wasn't. So Leonard Cohen started his career at 50 and was known as an old guy for 25 years. So that Leonard, honestly, it's funny, not metal or hardcore at all, but Leonard Cohen is my biggest inspiration, to start a career in my 50s. Why not? And what's great is I have a long history with bands, but I get to do new things and become a new guy. People haven't heard of me before. So,
well, you know what's funny? You mentioned Leonard Cohen. Or there's another person named Rodney Dangerfield who did the same exact thing. He said, if I don't make it by age 40, I'm going to give up comedy. He became a salesman. From 40 to 50, he kept writing jokes, but never did anything with it. At 50, he goes, let me just give it one more shot. And now he's like, no respect.
Yeah. And you know what? Since you're a comedian, I'll share my story. I could do a whole other hour with you, Rich, with my working for Live Nation for the last 17 years because I've driven all the rides. I drove Cheech and Chong when they played it at Oakdale. Okay. So I have stories for you. But when I worked the Jeff Dunham show at Bushnell, he travels with just one guy. He handles all the props himself. He has a box of props and everything, and he actually handles it all himself. The tour just consists of 3 or 4 people that travel. They don't bring any PA because there's just a microphone at every theater. How about Jeff Dunham's career story? I actually watched that one day and I could not believe it. He tried to make it as a comedian. Took him so long. He got canceled to be on the Johnny Carson show like once and almost gave up because it took him years and years and years. And then now he's like Jeff Dunham, but he's been trying to do what he did back to Johnny Carson days, and it's an amazing success story,
I love hearing stories like that. Because, like there was, I wrote a book too, and I was speaking to an author, and he said the only unpublished author is the one that gave up too soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it's funny, I was never really published back in the day. The only reason I'm published now is because I started a record label about 12 years ago, and I got Jay Reason from, formerly of Stillborn Records, to be my label manager. So when I started releasing bands like Dead by Wednesday, Death of the Rock Star, and doing videos and hiring radio markers and video markers and a publicist and doing it like, I was a record label like that did everything like a major record label did. And Opus gives me credit. He says that's one of the best campaigns any record label ever gave them was the Ear One Productions Death of the Rock Star campaign. Releasing.
Well, let's start. I don't want to interrupt you.
It taught me how to release myself and how to publish everything myself. So now when I release this song now, I've got Jay Reason as my executive producer, and I know all the steps now to release and get a publicist and do all that. And I learned that a lot from Jay. And just being in the business myself, other things. But go ahead.
No, what I wanted to say was I wanted to start talking about your production company, Ear One Productions. When did that start?
Ear One Productions. It really started. That was the name of me recording bands out of my bedroom. Out of my bedroom recording studio was the name I came up with to represent that. And then. When I got to give Jay Reason for making me brand myself too, because when it came time for me to start a record label, Jay said you have to brand yourself. Yeah, so what we did was we just called the record label Ear One Productions. So now Ear One Productions is everything from a record label to a promotional company. We organize and promote events, we've done motorcycle events. I've done charities for my friends who are sick and got injured or passed away. Ear One has gotten involved with that. So Ear One, we're a promoter, we're a record label, we're an organizer, and it's basically whatever I do is Ear One Productions, kind of, it's just Ear One is now the name of everything I do, studio and label wise. But when it came for me to do my solo, career, I had to brand myself with my name, and that's me, Mike Z Livingston. So that's the name I've had on Facebook ever since I joined, and I have MikeZLivingston.com. My YouTube channel is Mike Z Livingston at YouTube. So now it's just all about branding myself and getting myself out there, really. Well,
you mentioned that you produced Dead by Wednesday. What other bands do you have under Ear One Productions?
We put out a lot of great records. We put out a Night Bitch record. We put out a Continuum CD. We put out a CD for Bonded Through Hate. I put out an EP for Eyes of the Dead that I recorded in my studio. Let's see, Big Ed. I did. They're probably one of their most famous songs, "Revolution." I recorded that in their practice garage, actually, mostly in their practice garage. And let's see, who else do we release? We released Voice of Reasons. Like every track they ever released, we did a comprehensive history of like 40 tracks of Voice of Reason. I know I'm probably, we did the last one of the big projects was also a band called Heavy Breath. They're not together anymore, but that was a great band, like alternative hardcore metal band out of the Wallingford, New Haven area. So we did the Dead by Wednesday, Death of the Rock Star we released. I did a band called Tape Recorder 3. The Curse of Her Flesh, which is Eric Morton, who's one of the guys that I ride with regularly now.
He owns the, what's it called, Strange?
He was the owner of Strange Land Emporium. He left that partnership, but he also runs Connecticut Metal Shop on Facebook, which is that he was the first guy in our scene to start that idea. Like that could have been me starting a Facebook page called the Connecticut Metal Show, but when he started that Connecticut Metal Shop, I just joined it, and it's the go-to place we all go to for metal when you want to post something about Connecticut metal. Yeah, so he runs that, and he's still involved in the scene a lot, and The Curse of Her Flesh was another band I put out. That was a CD. Priapism. Put out a CD by Priapism that they recorded with the producer of Suffocation down on Long Island. Did the record, but we put the package together and released it.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah, that was all like in the last 12 years, and I learned a lot about that in the last 12 years. But then now when it came to everything's just really, honestly, I kind of left the music scene about 6-7 years ago from promoting shows. So there was a downturn again in the local scene where people were losing interest. Yeah. The bars weren't doing well. It was, because you know how it goes in waves. I wrote it, and when the waves started going away, there was nothing left to surf on. So I started getting into motorcycles, and I literally stopped to put my guitar down for quite a long time, except to jam here and there, and just got into motors. Every weekend I was riding motorcycles. I'm one of those guys. I started late in life when I got my first Harley Sportster for $2,300. I instantly fell in love with it. I got on that bike and I felt the feeling joining a bunch of guys. The first time a bunch of Harley guys let me try to keep up with them, I love that feeling, like that was just great, riding with guys. And I instantly fell in love with it, and I instantly got that bug. 7 years later, I can say I'm a biker and I'm part of the biker community, but that was really genuine, that love I found. And when I first got on that bike, man, I would ride it all over by myself for miles before I got a bunch of guys that wanted to ride. But now, I'm getting back into my music. And the result was getting back into my music. What happened? Well, of course, I wrote a song about motorcycles, and that wasn't contrived either. That was just natural, like when I went because I wrote about something that inspired me for my first big song, that and that the guys riding with the guys, if you read all the lyrics, that's all true. That really inspired me, and it's real, and I'm really happy about the reaction. Everybody really seems to love the track, the quality that the production guys did for me. They like the song, they like what I did, they like my guitar, they can't believe it's my voice. I am so happy and grateful. Everybody's been so supportive. With just sites doing stories on it and premiering my song and video. Next thing, we're going after radio stations next week. I'm going to start hitting up all my local friends from radio stations. I'm going to go across the nation and send that, let's fucking ride. Let's see which ones will do it, which ones want the let's effing ride. That's okay. We'll let them play that one. And that's my, the first 2 weeks of this campaign were about releasing the single and the video. The third week into the campaign is going to start with more press and radio. So by the end of this 2 months, I'm going to have promoted everything pretty well, and then getting ready to release another one in a few months. That's my plan. So,
now, what inspired you to pick the guitar back up?
Just honestly, when I started getting inspired to play, it wasn't getting back into music in the way of going back out and promoting shows again, and seeing bands. And because there wasn't a lot of great shows I wanted to go see, it was more about at home. I started jamming a lot and just playing and recording some riffs in my home studio. And then when I started writing, I really just wrote what was music first, but then I thought about what I was going to write, and it sounded like a song that was like high energy, like like it could be a riding song. So I was like, yeah, I want to write a song about our riding crew, and that all just came out. So yeah, that's really it. And now I'm under pressure because I'm working on the next track. I gotta try to follow that up with nothing mediocre. So wish me luck with that.
Good luck.
That's what I'm doing for the next few months, working on that. And I'm proud to announce though that I'm bringing back the whole team that I did for this. Our Opus already is going to play drums again. Zeus already said he'd be more than happy to mix and master any more songs for him. And I'm going to hit up Nikki again to record there because he did an awesome job. And the video director, Edwin, also agreed to do the video again. So I have the whole team in place. I've got my executive producer and I have a publicist who have all basically agreed to be on board again for the next couple songs. So that's my plan.
Are you expecting to release a single at a time, or are you going to release 5 or 6?
Yeah, no, because that's how it's all done now, Rich. As you know, things aren't, because there's not a lot of physical product where there's that record or CD where there was 10 or 11 tracks anymore. Yeah. It's not about having a record with maybe 5 or 6 big hits. There was some records from the 70s, 80s, 90s that there was like 8 top 10 hits on just one record, like a Guns N' Roses record or like a Pearl Jam. It was crazy, but it's not like that anymore. You don't blow your load all on one. So now, so people pay more attention to one song at a time and videos and video content. That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense to promote one thing at a time. And then after I have enough songs, so by next year, that'll be great, because then I'll be able to do that too. I'll be able to release a physical thing that has songs on it, and then I'm gonna get fun with it. Shit, I don't know. I might release a cassette, as well as a record. How the cassettes are coming back for fun.
See, I think that's a smart idea, because people have short-term memories. It's an ADD nation. People like the 3-second or 3-minute videos,
yes,
songs. I miss the days of like the deep cuts of the 70s and 80s and even 90s. But I think you should just do a George Lucas Star Wars, just completely, like release a song, release 2 songs, release 3 songs, then re-release the whole thing together.
Yeah,
just do it over and over again. The more people hear it, the more people share it. I mean, you are doing it. See, what I like about you is that you've been in the music scene for so long and it's changed so much. You go with the flow. You're not trying to be stubborn and say, no, this is the way I used to do it.
I'm definitely
how it works now, and you know how to play the game.
You bet. That was when I started off with this. Because I've recorded, when I was 17 years old, I was recording songs. I borrowed my dad's friend's drum set, brought it in my bedroom, and at 17, I was literally playing drums, playing every track, and I figured out how to ping pong with like boom boxes, and then I took ping ponging to a different level where I got 2 tape decks and a Radio Shack 4-channel mic mixer, and I figured out how to bounce back and forth from these 2 tape decks, but I figured out how to bounce back and forth like almost like 16 times. So I literally would record a drum track, and then I would add a bass part, a guitar part, another guitar part, a vocal keyboards. This is before 4 tracks, Rich. So nobody had 4 tracks. Nobody was doing this. So I went into high school. I was in Guilford High School. I brought in this recording of me playing every instrument, and people were like, how the hell did you do that? And do you know who my biggest influence to do that was at the time?
Who?
Prince.
I was going to say that.
I am a huge Prince fan. Let me tell you, when I first found out that Prince got signed to his record label because he played every instrument on a recording, much like Tom Schultz from Boston, those are my 2 biggest influences to do it all myself in my home studio, compose everything. I mean, I've composed orchestras and everything. I've composed some pretty cool stuff in my home studios. but the truth is that's all fun, but what's fun is playing with people, collaborating with people. So I've come full circle. I spent all these years playing in bands, and now I'm coming back, but I got to remember to bring back the human element and other people into what I'm doing. I'm not I'm not so think I'm too smart that I can do it all myself and do it better than anybody. I know I want the help of all the best people around me, and that's been fun. Doing it like that, doing it like a real record label, like a real artist would do. Except I've learned to do it like that, and this release is through Ear One Productions. This is a Ear One Productions. It's published through Ear One Productions as well. But you brought up a good point though between the difference between the European and the American crowds, which leads into this, which is Americans are very trendy. We have so many things to choose from and see and grab and hear that we grab something, like the emo trend, the pop punk trend, the metal trend. It all had their own days. So in America, we get into something, it lasts for a while, and then we get into something else. And there's very few people who are diehards to stick with it. In Europe, metal has just been big in Europe since it's been around, and European metalheads and throughout the rest of the world, they're just hardcore into it all the time. Old school, like the 10 or 12 hardcore friends, me and that show up at Dewey's Pub, like that showed up for Diamond Head, or when I brought Liege Lord there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You go to Europe, there's hundreds of thousands of these people that are like us, just like the hardcore diehards. And that's what's great when you go to Europe is they really do love the American bands, like they're imported. Like the treatment when 100 Demons and 25 to Life went to other countries, like in France, it was amazing because they treat you like such a human. Like here's what the promoters do when you're in a hardcore band. They book you at a club, they got a cold snacks waiting, they feed you a hot meal. They bring you back to their house where there's multiple rooms. You crash at the promoter's house. When you wake up, they let you take showers. They feed you breakfast before they say goodbye to you. Now, guess what you get when you play at a club here in the States, or also in England. I found out England and the States. Guess what you get when you play in England?
Wait. I'll tell you what I used to get. $20 a piece of beer.
A case of water and maybe a 6-pack of beer. Like in England, in Europe, there's a lot more beer. We never had a shortage of beer on our tour bus in Europe because they would just give us cases. Yeah, but that's the difference between the people. There's just Europe. There's this diehard metal thing that always exists out there. And you know what's crazy? There's bands that exist in Europe that we don't even know existed. Like you remember this band Propane? The guys from and Heavy Rain, they started Propane. I always wondered what the hell happened to Propane. Like you don't hear about them at all. They don't do anything in the U.S. Well, when I went on tour in Europe, guess where Propane is? They live in Europe and they're big in Europe and they tour all over the place.
I love it.
They moved over there because they played there on a few tours and realized they love us in Europe. They're like rock stars in Europe. In America, nobody remembers them. So they went with it. I couldn't believe that's where Propane is. You want to see Propane? Go to Europe. they're there. It's like that's what's cool about Europe is it's awesome, man. It's an awesome experience, that whole thing, man. Absolutely.
Have you ever played Japan?
No, that's the only thing. Right before I left 100 Demons and the band split up as a full-time touring band, we were just about to do that Australia-Japan tour, because when you go to Japan, you also include Australia because they're close. So you can, Australia and Japan are two of the closest civilized countries that do metal and hardcore bands. So we actually hung out with a promoter where 100 Demons was on tour with Terror and Donnybrook, and a guy from Australia that books all the tours in Australia, the hardcore tours, was ready to set it up for us, and that didn't happen. So I didn't get to do that. But way before I joined 100 Demons, they were one of the very first hardcore bands and first bands ever in history. They played in China.
Wow.
A Chinese promoter on the 100 Demons first album, The Eyes of the Lord, a Chinese hardcore guy flew them to China, paid for everything, did everything, and they told me they actually Chinese hardcore bands opened up that sounded like 100 Demons. Like he's not even joking. And they ate snakehead soup and they ate crazy stuff. And this is like, I'm talking like, this is like, 25 years ago. So way before I joined the band, they were one of the first and only bands to play China. And now China is opened up. You know, like there's China Live Nation in China. This stuff happened with COVID. It's really too bad because China started to really become a massive new market for us, for imported bands, you know, like touring bands. I mean, those people in China, they're just like everybody else, the regular people. They're music fans, they're musicians. There's a massive market. So it was really too bad everything that happened. So no, I have not played anywhere Asian. I would have liked to, but
well, the reason I bring up Japan is because I've read so many interviews with different metal bands who said when they go over there, everybo's so respectful, so quiet. They're not sure if they actually like the band until the song's over. Then they start clapping. They're so
yeah.
So
the Japanese have their own traditions. You're absolutely right. You know, it's so cool to travel around the world and notice things about cultures too. Like like when we played in Greece, the Greek metal bands that opened up for 100 Demons in Athens. It was math metal, and I was like, it was like these crazy riffs and rhythms. I'm like. Afterwards, I thought about it, like, why are these Greek kids? I'm like, well, duh, come on, the Pythagoras theorem. The Greeks invented a lot of this math that we use. So when you go and play with Greek bands, they're even more advanced than us because they invented math and how it relates to music and everything. They were like Meshuggah times 10, these Greek bands. Like, I swear to God, it like blew me away. It's like, but it's part of their culture, you know, they're very advanced. In that way musically, like big time, the Greek metal bands, but that's the fun of that, you know, that part, you know, the cultural things everywhere, you know.
I think the problem is people are too close-minded. There's so much great music out there from so many different cultures, so many different countries, that if they actually open their mind a little bit and listen to it, they would find out how much great music there is out there for them. And you mentioned a lot of it, and I agree with you.
Yeah, no, there's so much music out there, you know, like I was amazed every time I went to a different country. There's an MTV in every different country. So
really?
France, yeah, like there's MTV of France, and it's just weird because you hear all this music that you don't hear over here. You know, there's so much European music that it's part of the European. You know where you see it, like your Euro MTV. You see it's like, but there's a lot of stuff. You know what's funny to be in Germany. And to see like in Germany and there's like a hip hop band that just look like a bunch of tough guys from like, you know, Compton, and they're German dudes, you know, and it's like that shit is real. Like they really do emulate American culture a lot in the rest of the world. And like when I toured with 25 to Life, I felt like royalty because they just worship New York hardcore bands to the hill. And then also, you know, the Connecticut bands get big respect. Hatebreed, 100 Demons, Death Threat. When I toured California, like in LA, that's what's popular in LA is Death Threat, 100 Demons, and Hatebreed. In Connecticut, what's popular here? What was big in San Francisco, LA back in the day? We love Suicidal Tendencies. We love Slayer. So there is this thing between Connecticut and San Francisco and LA. They're actually, the scenes are very similar. And like when you gave me credit for, I started one of the first crossover radio shows on the East Coast. My show at NHU and NYU were the first two shows on the entire East Coast to start mixing like Agnostic Front with Slayer or Sodom with Suicidal Tendencies, you know.
Great mix.
Yeah, you know, and the list goes on. There's just many more hardcore, DRI with Creator. So that was the thing with the Thrash Attack, and that kind of became a thing, and then crossover music became huge. Then next thing you know, there was like SOD was huge, you know, like crossing things over was like the thing. It was just
Well, look at DRI came out with an album called Crossover.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and it was the pinnacle of that really. And DRI, great guys. I got to interview. DRI and COC played at the Brick and Wood. I got to interview those guys. Death and Dark Angel played at the Brick and Wood when I was in NHU. I got to interview Chuck and
let me ask you a question about Chuck, because I had a recent guest on there. We were talking about him. There's a documentary on Chuck. It's all about the band Death. Mm-hmm. What was he like in person? Because according to the documentary, he hated touring. He hated being on the road. He canceled so many tours. The rest of the band was so mad at him all the time. I didn't realize any of this was going on. I've seen him perform at the Anthrax. I've seen him perform at other places in Connecticut. And I never knew all the behind-the-scenes drama. What was he like when you met him?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't remember the details of that. And I've been recently, I've been trying to dig out some of my interviews that I did, and that's one of them. But it was so long ago, I don't remember the details. I just remember it was cool. It went well. I interviewed from Dark Angel. Oh man, I'm trying to remember who I interviewed. I don't know if it was Gene. It might have been Gene Hoglan that I interviewed in Dark Angel. But yeah, they were just nice guys. Everybody, I've been so lucky. Everybody that I've ever met and interviewed has just been really cool. There's nobody that's ever like been a jerk. There was one time when I was interviewing Slayer, and Carrie and Jeff, they weren't that into doing interviews, that particular day. So Tom took the lead. I was interviewing the three of them, but by the end of the interview, I was really talking to Tom because they're nice guys, and it's not something you take personally. They're not really into interviews, Jeff and Carrie, but they're super nice guys. Like, talk to them. They did promos for me, and we're cool guys. But Tom's the talkative guy. That's the guy you want to pull aside. He's a great dude. Like when I interviewed Lemmy, when I got to meet Lemmy at the West Hartford Ballroom, it's a real quick story about that. It's a story about being ready and being spontaneous. I went to set up an interview with Motorhead. You expect to talk to Lemmy, right? So, so there was another guy from another radio station. We were both getting ready to try to talk to Lemmy. I went up and I met Lemmy. And when I walked up to Lemmy, I walked up to him like, "Hey, Lemmy, how you doing? Can I ask you a couple of questions?" And he looks up at me and he goes, "Well, who are you? The goddamn police?" He goes, so I was like, and Mike Z, WNHU, and he's like, yeah, we'll try to set that up later or whatever, So I talked to the manager, and it was about midday through the day, and he's like, listen, I don't have Lemmy. I'm not sure if I can get you Lemmy today because he's real busy, but I got Filthy Phil and Phil Campbell on the bus right now. They'll talk to you. So the other guy from the radio station, he was so fixated on Lemmy, he's like, he refused, like, no, I'm going to wait for Lemmy. So I was like, nah, I have my questions for Lemmy, but I'll talk to those guys. So I go on the tour bus. I walk on the bus, and it's just Phil and Phil. And as soon as I walk on, they just start barking like dogs at me, like loudly, like, ow, 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 like, and it was just a test. Like, I just started laughing. I thought it was like fucking hilarious. But I think they've done that before, and some people have freaked out and just walked right out of the tour. But it's the English sense of humor and the way to break your balls. I laughed. So they were cool, and they let me say it. I talked to Phil, and Phil, well, guess what? That guy from the radio station left early, never interviewed anybody. Well, Lemmy ended up hanging out with us at the bar after the show.
I love it.
Like 40 minutes, and I taped the whole thing. He was there trying to clean up the bar, and Lemmy was like, "Hey, can't you see we're having a conversation here?" Like, he talked to a group of like 7 or 8 of us at the bar for as long as we wanted to talk. I mean, he was the coolest guy ever. One of the funniest things we laughed at was he had pointed out the band Satan's Penis, and he said how the name of the bass player was Burnt Testicle. He thought that was the funniest fucking thing. He thought that was the funniest thing ever, and we were dying laughing with Lemmy over like Satan's Penis and the bass player Burnt Testicle. That's the main one fun thing about that conversation with Lemmy, that he's a great guy. He was such a nice guy to just sit there and talk to all of us.
Well, you could tell he had a great sense of humor because later on he started doing trauma movies with Lloyd Kaufman. Right. And he was funny enough. But I love your mentality, and I got to tell you a story where basically always be ready. When I was doing comedy, I was visiting a friend in Tennessee. We went to go see Jeff Ross. He's the roast master of comedy where he just roasts people all the time. So I was way in the upper deck at Zany's, worldwide famous club in Nashville, Tennessee, sold out show. So he's like, you know what, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to bring people up on stage and roast them. So I ran as fast as I could. I just made it on stage. There was about 15 of us on stage. So he said, he's looking at me. You can tell he's looking at my hands. I have cerebral palsy for people who don't know. So he's looking at me. He goes, what are you? I said, well, I work during the day, but I'm a stand-up comedian by night. And I hear people go, give him the mic. Give him the mic. So I said, Jeff, it's my big break. And he's looking at my hand. He goes, it looks like you already had your big break. So he starts laughing. And he goes, you know what? When you have something funny to say, I'll get back to you. He roasted everybody else on stage. He comes back to me and says, here you go. I got to do my set. Standing ovation. I couldn't even hear myself talk because people were screaming and yelling, cheering so loud.
Awesome.
And later on, Jeff was on stage. He said, you know what? My friend's band is playing down the road. Why don't you check them out? So afterwards, we said, all right, my friends and I said, let's check the band out. We walked inside. As soon as I walked in, the band said, hey, not only is this a great guy, he's a hilarious comedian. They brought me up on stage. Jeff Ross walked into the club. He goes, what are you, following me?
Stealing his thunder.
But the point was, is that just like you, I was ready. I mean, I was on vacation. I was just having fun. I was watching a show. I said, I'm going to perform. And it's the same thing with you.
Yeah.
Like, don't just walk away from something.
No way, man. That's your shining moment. That is so. You know what? That's the equivalent of. That's the equivalent of. You know the Who story where Keith Moon got so way passed out in the middle of a concert, and Pete Townsend goes up to the microphone. Do we have a drummer in the house? And do you know this is in the United States? And there's a guy like raises his hand, runs up on stage. Do you know that guy finished the set like with the band because he had just jammed the songs with his headphones so many times?
That's great.
He's legendary. Like you can look that story up and look his name up. That is he. Without that guy, that show would not have gone on. And I saw the equivalent of that recently, where Dave Grohl brought up this guy with Kiss makeup on stage at some concert. Did you see that video?
I did see it.
Videos. And the guy looks like he like you don't know if he's gonna. You almost think it's a setup because the guy grabs his guitar. And he nails like every single note and like the solo, like it's like note for note, and he knows the moves and like a Kiss guy. He's like Kiss guy, everybody, let's hear it for Kiss guy. Yep. And he's just like some Latino guy with Kiss makeup that jumped on stage, grabbed his guitar, and he knew the song note for note, and like he rocked out in front of like tens of thousands, you know. So like it's a beautiful thing, you know. You be and that my moment was when I came home and I was kind of done with touring with 25 to Life, and I got the phone call. 100 Demons was looking for my phone number. They were my favorite band in the world, so I jumped on it like no one wanted something more than their life ever, and that's what I did. And thanks to those guys, and thanks to Jamie Joster for calling me to open up for 25 to Life, I kind of owe him that. And Jamie Joster came back around later when he was looking to record some stuff. He came off of an episode of Headbangers Ball from New York, and he came up to my home studio with Ezak from Scarhead, you know. It's like, and I was playing with 25 to Life at the time, but Ezak wasn't really talking to Rick too much anymore. But he comes in my home studio and he starts looking at my posters, and he sees the Agnostic Front, he sees the Crumb Suckers. They start talking about Mike Schnapp from Combat Records, you know, who started all that, Megadeth, you know. Yeah. And he's like, yo, Mike Schnapp's my manager, yo. So I got started talking to Ezak and whatnot, and you know, and I kind of got Rick to Life and Ezak talking again. They fell out. He kind of fell out of the hardcore scene again. Unfortunately, I feel bad for him, but Jamie Joster came back around, and because of him, you know, I was able to hook up with a couple guys. So I went down and watched the Shop Blocker session with him when he was recording with Puerto Rican Mike, and they were doing like a hip hop hardcore metal thing, recording that. Trod Nossel, you know, Jamie came down, and it's funny. I was going to go to the studio and just check it out, and then go do my gig in Long Island with 25 to Life. And one of the guitar players, this guy G from Setback, he was one of the guitar players in the project, and he needed a ride back to Queens. So I gave him a ride back. And we got to Queens. He's like, you know what? Keep going. I want to go say hi to Rick. You know, so Rick hadn't talked to anybody from DMS or anybody in a long time. You know, so when I showed up, he got a little worried. Like, wait, who's here from DMS to see me out? It's like, yo, it's. And so I introduced him, and he looks at the guy, and he remembers this is a short little pudgy guy that used to come see 25 to Life. And but long story short, so I kind of reconnected Rick and the DMS guys. You know, when they were. To the point where Rick used to do, he's the king of DIY, selling all the videos and hardcore like demos. He invented that and copied everybody's shit. Well, he had the Setback demo, and G didn't even have it himself, and he's on that demo. And he's like, yeah, big seller, yo. He's like, oh, Rick, give the demo to him, you know, like he's on it. I was like, oh, I don't know, yo, $8, yo. I was like, oh, come on, Rick, give it. So he gives him the demo. So he gave G the Setback demo. So, it's funny. I have been in positions to be able to reunite people, when they haven't been, and I've even done that with, with some pretty heavyweights. I'm happy to be in positions like that. Just bring people together. I love to bring people together for metal, for motorcycles, whatever it is.
As you said, you're the uniter.
I am. I'm a uniter, not a divider.
I love it. Well, I have to say, I'm just going to mention some names right off the bat that I can think of. You, Opus, Kai Blackwood from Tokyo Death Squad, Sacred Oath, Ronnie from Curse the Sun. You guys have been at it for a good 35, 40 years, and I have so much respect for you that you're keeping it going.
Thank you, brother.
And you're still, all the bands I just mentioned are coming out with great music, probably the best you've come out with. You, Sacred Oath.
It's my best work. The song I produced, I can't even deny that it's my best work because, it's my first work of just myself. So, not blowing my own horn, but I feel it's my best work that I've ever done because I haven't done one yet, so so I have to keep trying to live up to that. But I appreciate that, brother. We're lifers, all of us, you know what I mean? We're in it one way or another. You're living your dream in a different way now with doing the comedy and doing your podcast and everything. That's awesome, man. Good for you,
I know. I'm having a great time doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like I told Opus, I said I didn't stick with bands, but I still have that drive to create. I still need to be like either writing books, doing comedy, doing radio shows, whatever it is. I just need to be doing something. And I love the fact that all these people that I came up with, like I said, you, Opus, Sacred Oath, are still doing it. And I come to see you guys whenever I can. Speaking of the show, I did see you perform at Opus's birthday party. But last time I saw you perform, which was years ago, was with Yngwie Malmsteen. Which band was that?
Oh, that was Atmosphere, when Atmosphere opened up for Yngwie.
Now, what was he like?
Well, it's funny because back in the day, when Yngwie opened up for Iron Maiden and Sabotage in New Haven Coliseum, I had an interview with Bruce. Vicky had an interview with Yngwie, and Rob had an interview with Sabotage. Well, Yngwie was wasted out of his mind. Vicky couldn't even really interview. He was almost impossible to deal with because he was literally so wasted. He was like slurring his words, and they had to kind of carry him around backstage. He was a mess, and he was a jerk. He was an asshole.
Well, that's why I asked, because I've heard stories about him like that.
He was a jerk. I know someone who was his personal manager, and his personal manager just tried to get him to leave a bar one time, and he beat the crap out of the guy. He was a real jerk back in the day. Well, when Atmosphere opened for Yngwie, and he shared the room with us, he had become sober, and he was the nicest, coolest guy ever. Like we literally sat backstage and I talked with the guy for like an hour, and he was telling us just how much he loves being in the US. He has an American wife, they have children, they live in Florida, and he's sober. He said, oh, they won't let me put alcohol on my rider, but Toad's Place was nice enough to give me a bottle of wine. You know what I mean? He really was straightening his act out, and the label used to even put alcohol on his rider to straighten him out. And that was probably the most sober, he's probably been sober ever since, but he was an amazing performer. Great guy, awesome guy, at that point, what a difference from at one point in your life. And then when you're at a later point in life and you're like such an amazing guy. So I was lucky at the point when I met Yngwie, he was amazing.
What's funny? So it said really quickly, the one person that I met that defended him was Billy Sheehan. I met Billy Sheehan one time, and he said he was in the David Lee Roth band at the time, and he said that Yngwie gets a lot of shit because he's a perfectionist. David Lee Roth, he goes like this. All he said says David Lee Roth an asshole. He goes, he has his good days and his bad days. I says, he have more bad days? He has his good days, he has bad days. He goes, but Yngwie is a perfectionist. He gets a lot of shit for that. So he defended, because he was in a band with Yngwie when they first came to America together.
Yeah. It was a Steeler, I think.
Yes, it was.
Yes. Well, here's my story. When Billy Sheehan came around with David Lee Roth, he had Steve Vai on guitar. My friend had an interview arranged with Billy Sheehan. I tagged along just in case we could convince Steve to let me, so I had questions set for Steve. We walk into the backstage in Haven Coliseum. In a little room is Steve Vai and Billy Sheehan jamming with their guitar and bass, just warming up. Billy comes out, does the interview. I said, hey, Billy, you think Steve might be up for answering some questions? And we were in David Lee Roth's dressing room, right? He says, I don't know. He's like, let me go ask him. he walks out and he literally comes walking back in with Steve Vai. And I had questions. Wow. I had questions, a whole page of questions going back to his Flexible album, to his days with Frank Zappa, yes, to his what he thought was one of the best gigs in rock and roll with David Lee Roth right now. And he was one of the most, oh my God. There's another guy. Like, he talked to me for like 40 minutes. David Lee Roth was walking in and out of the dressing room, and I never even turned to like Google him or anything. I heard his voice, but I was interviewing Steve. You know, I didn't. So I interviewed Steve Vai. Great guy. You know, I'm so lucky. I got to meet my all-time favorite guitar player ever in life, though, is Michael Schenker from UFO.
Yes.
And he's my ultimate hero. He has influenced my style more than anybody because he was the first. He was shredding metal blues fast and shredding in the 70s. Like, guys like Van Halen learned from guys like Michael Schenker, all these guys. You know, Steve Harris learned from Pete Way from UFO. You know, UFO were doing it way before everybody. Everybody knows it. You talk to all the British new wave of heavy metal bands, they all say UFO. So when UFO regrouped and did a show at Toad's Place with all the original members, I'm going. And Michael Schenker was there, and if you went and bought his solo acoustic record CD, you could meet him and do a meet and greet. So it was like a thing. Pay like, you know, $30 and you could go up. And so I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to go. And this CD, when I bought it, it was a CD. Every fan that ever wrote to him that was his fan, when you opened up this CD, there was 1,000 names inside his CD, and it was all his fans, and they were listed in the CD. I wasn't in it because I never used to write to him and stuff, but I shook his hand. I shook Michael Schenker's right picking hand with my picking hand, and there's only a few other guys whose picking hands I've shaken. One of them was Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, and that is a legend. That Jimi Hendrix called him one of the most amazing guitar players ever. So like, there's a few guys that I've gotten to meet and shake their right hand. You know, guys like Dave Mustaine and guys like these other guys are like, I'm really lucky. You know what one guy I didn't get to meet, but I was on tour with 100 Demons, and we went to go see Damage Plan about 2 months before Dimebag was murdered. We were hanging. Shadows Fall was opening up for Damage Plan, so we hung out with Shadows Fall on their tour bus. We were hanging out backstage. And I almost got to the point where I was going to be able to meet, you know, Dimebag, but he had a meet and greet going with about 15 people. When I'm walking backstage, I'm walking back there to go to where like the Shadows Fall guys, and Dimebag walks by me, and he walked by me, and we walked right by each other, but he looked at me right in my eye and nodded at me.
Yeah.
And I nodded back, and the only reason he did that and walked by me, because I looked back, he was walking past me because there was like 12 people waiting for a meet and greet. So he just looked at me, but you know, to this day, I consider that me meeting Dimebag Darrell, because he looked into my eye and genuinely nodded and said hello to me with a gesture. And, you know, like, you know, it's such a small thing, but you know what? He didn't have to do. He could just walk right by me, you know? Like, you know, I work for Live Nation now. I drive artists around. Like, I could tell you stories. Cheech and Chong were amazing. I had such a good time, and Chong was so cool. I went to go reload some of his gear in the van, and with Chong in the van, I was driving him back to the hotel, and a case started to fall out of the van. And I just instinctively grabbed it and caught it. And Tommy Chong looks at me, and he looks over and he goes, "Musician?" I'm like, "Yeah." I go, "Yeah, guitar." You know, so this is good. And I got to drive them back to the hotel. You know, such nice guys, you know.
You met some great people. Met some legends.
Enough, and you know, but like, it's guys like that, like working for Live Nation. You know, like, yeah, I drove Keith Urban once, you know, and I just drove him like from the venue to the hotel 5 minutes up the road. Yeah, he was in my passenger seat. He gets out of the passenger seat without saying anything. He goes about 12 feet, stops dead in his tracks, turns around, opens up the passenger door, and he goes to me, "Hey man, I just want to thank you, you know, for the safe ride over here." And it was literally a 5-minute ride. And I was like, "Oh yeah, no problem, man. It's what I do," you know. But like Keith Urban, you know, like, he's a really he's actually, guys, oh my God, I forgot to thank that guy. And he turns around and thanks me, like a guy that was just driving him, you know, like.
No, I love that.
Live Nation, man. I can tell you stories. Oh man, like when Iron Maiden played, and I've got Adrian Smith now in my passenger seat of my minivan, and I get to tell him how he's influenced me to be in touring bands, and I got to tell him how I played in London with 100 Demons, and he's like, "Oh, you played in London? At what club?" "Oh, we got to play at the Underworld." "Oh yeah, the Underworld, mate, in Camden." Right, good place. It's like, in what world did I get to have
That is
my
very cool.
driving Adrian Smith now?
What?
Here's my story. Glenn Tipton from Judas Priest.
Well, wait, before you get into that, I have a story about Iron Maiden. I want to tell you really quickly. I met Bruce Dickinson inadvertently. He played at Toad's Place when he was out doing his solo album, Tattooed Millionaire. I was outside, and the line of the bus was crazy, and I inadvertently bumped into Bruce. I'm like, "Bruce, how's it going?" You could tell he was all, he wasn't used to people were like moshing, jumping up on stage. He's a rocker. So he goes, "Right. Like to trade places with me, mate?" I said, "Any day, Bruce, any day." You could tell he was so discombobulated. He was not used to the small Toast Place Club and the people being so close. But afterwards, he seemed like a nice guy. He just seemed a little shaken up.
That's so cool because years later, that show I told you, the Maiden show, I got to interview Bruce Dickinson. And, that was set up through Rod Smallwood through Capitol Records, the same guy that would hook me up through Megadeth. He was the big promotional guy. He would just happen to be from Connecticut, but he was the promotional guy throughout the whole country. But he took a liking to me because he was close, and he hooked me up with Iron Maiden, interviews with Megadeth. We gave away Iron Maiden watches, but he set me up with an interview with Bruce Dickinson. And the one thing that Bruce had a thing he wanted to talk to me about. And so I had to literally place a question in my interview because it was something Bruce wanted to address. And what it was back in the day was Bruce wanted to talk about the violence that was happening at the shows. Like people like flipping over cars or like people throwing stuff at stage. He's like, "If you've ever had a Zippo lighter travel at your forehead at 70 miles an hour from the top stadium seat," he's like, "it's not very fun." So he was an awesome guy. Like, he answered all my questions, but he wanted to address this, the crowd. It's funny because he wasn't used to people acting like that at Toads. Well, years later in stadiums and all over the world, Bruce is still trying to get people to kind of, behave, so to speak. But he was still a great guy. And I have a picture to this day that I took with me and all of Iron Maiden, my arm around Dave Murray on the end, and Rod Smallwood, their manager, is in the middle, When Iron Maiden played years later and I drove Adrian Smith, I drove Rod Smallwood again, and I got to say hello to Rod Smallwood like 20 years later from interviewing Maiden at New Haven Coliseum, But here's the best. I want to tell you my story about this. Is my favorite story. I went to go Judas Priest open up at New Haven Coliseum when I was 12 years old, open up for Kiss. Okay, one of my first concerts. One of my very first concerts. My first concert was Aerosmith when I was 12 with Uriah Heep open up. But when that show happened, I'll never forget, we were there for Kiss, and this band Judas Priest was opening up, but we didn't know who the hell they were. This guy comes out with this flaming red hair, and he's wearing, to us, well, back in the day, looked like gay dudes, like it looked like he looked like a Village People, because that's all we knew about guys in leather. He looked like a gay guy from the London club scene or a Village person. Yeah. As young kids, we were like, "Oh, that guy seems kind of gay," And but yet they would become one of my absolute favorite bands. Like, he came out on that Harley Davidson.
Oh yeah.
It was all very machoistic, but there was definitely like this sort of gay side to it. And as kids, we were so honest. We made a funny joke, like, that seems kind of gay, So 30 years later, Judas Priest is playing at the Oakdale, and they're playing the day after 4th of July, the day before 4th of July. So, no, the day after 4th of July, excuse me, at the Oakdale Theater. So on 4th of July, they're flying in, to Bradley Airport. Now, my boss is advancing the show, and he's telling the production manager of Judas Priest that, that's a holiday here, so you guys got to pay our runners a little extra for, like, holiday pay. It's 4th of July. And the English guy goes, "Oh, right, mate. That's that holiday you guys celebrate over there in the States." And my boss, he's great. He's an old metalhead and drummer, same age as me. Used to be in a metal band. Now he runs Upper State New York and all of Connecticut for Live Nation. He goes back to this guy. Yeah, that's right. That's that holiday we celebrate where we kicked your guys' ass. He's like, so you better treat them extra special.
I love it.
Do you know I had to go back to Bradley twice. I got $200 for the day. They gave me $100 every time I went to go. I picked up the whole band at Bradley, brought them back to the Oakdale. Well, Glenn Tipton needed a ride from the Oakdale to the Holiday Inn in North Haven where the band was staying, right? So the rules of being a driving the star artist, chauffeur rules in the business, you keep your mouth shut, you keep your radio off, you do what and you don't talk to them.
Yeah.
If they decide they want to talk to you, so that's what I do. I keep my mouth completely shut. So I take him around Route 5. We go past Wharton Brook. He sees like the trees and the pond. And so Glenn goes, "This is a really lovely area you live in." He's like, "How's the fishing around here?" You know, and so he, out of the blue, he just starts talking to me. I was like, "Oh," so I said, "Well, Glenn, you know, I said, I've been out in saltwater. We get some nice blackfish and flats and mackerel. I said, in the rivers up here, there's some bass and trout, you know." And so here I'm talking with Glenn Tipton about fishing. And we got close to the hotel. As we're pulling up to the hotel, I took my opportunity because he was already talking to me. I turned around and I said, "Glenn," and this was Judas Priest's 30th anniversary tour at the Oakdale. I turned to him and I said, "Glenn," I said, "I just want you to know this is my 30th anniversary too." I said, "I saw you guys 30 years ago in New Haven Coliseum open up for Kiss." And he looked at me and he looked back and he just gave me a thumbs up. And I was like, "What?" This is my life. So, just by working for Live Nation, and even when I wasn't in the music business, always with my band, but I worked for Live Nation over the years. They let me go tour with 25 to 1100 Demons. And when I came back from tour, my job was still there. So
that's very cool.
Yeah. So I've been lucky enough to parlay all that, but because of interviewing bands back in the day with NHU, all the local bands, then going on tour with 100 Demons. And we got to open up for Nuclear Assault in Europe. When we played in Germany, Schmier from Destruction was at our show, and he's literally about 8 feet tall. Yeah. He was talking to the guys in 100 Demons about doing some shows with Destruction and 100 Demons. It's like, what? And then years later, here I am working for Live Nation. Now I drive all the rock stars around. So I've literally driven so many rock stars around, but my favorite people that I've driven were Cheech and Chong. That's
funny.
I grew up in Wallingford listening to their records as a kid. Oh, yeah. As an adult, I'm working in Wallingford, driving them, providing transportation for them. So, it's
well, Up in Smoke is one of the best movies around. I love that movie.
God, yeah. So as a comedian, I actually, I grew up just listening to the records.
Yeah, me too.
There were no movies yet, right? So when we were you probably did too, real young, but yeah, there was already all those records were big things when we were kids, and it was like
something about open the door.
Hey, class, shut up! Remember that one?
Yes. Going back to Judas Priest, though, going back to Judas Priest, I want to say I think I've never met any of the members, but one of my favorite things is seeing when the kids committed suicide, with Judas Priest playing in the background, they had to go on trial. But my favorite thing is Rob Halford on stage. What are some of the lyrics? And he just belted out the lyrics without any music or anything. He's on the stand just singing Judas Priest songs. It was such a great thing.
I never finished what I was coming around to with that one. When we were kids and we were 12 and we were like, that guy seems kind of gay, Well, later he came out as gay. Right. And he said to people, he's like, "People, have you read my lyrics?" Really, when you go back and read those lyrics, it's no wonder. How could you not know? It's awesome because he was one of the most famous metal people that everybody respected. And when he came out and he was gay, nobody cared. They
shouldn't.
Elton John was already royalty. Nobody cared, but but nobody knew about Rob Halford. But when he came out, it's like, guess what? Nobody cares. He's got one of the greatest voices ever. So he sounds better than ever live. And I did a phone interview with him once. He talked to me for about 45 minutes. Great guy. Just, But that's how funny is that? As kids, 12, you were like, this guy looks, and it was like it took 25 years. We were right.
I'll never listen to the song "Hot Rockin'" again the same.
It's funny. As an adult, I forgot about that. I didn't think about that. I really didn't. As a kid, you noticed it, but it's like. But who cares? It's like we live in a different world. People don't care if people are, that's the beauty of that. Like we have evolved in a lot of ways. Yeah. People don't, take stuff like that anymore. There's a lot of good things that happen. And
he makes great music. He's a great frontman. But like I said, it's like I'll never listen to the song "Hot Rockin' the same" ever again.
Oh no, absolutely not. That's it. Nah, it's
well, the movie Rockstar is actually all about the Judas Priest, because what happened, I'm sure you know this, I'll let my viewers know, he left the band and they were on YouTube and they saw somebody doing karaoke and they said, "Hey, who's this guy?" And no, sorry, that's wrong. That was Journey. This one, he was in a Judas Priest tribute band.
And Ripper Owens.
Tim Ripper Owens. He was in Judas Priest,
and it was probably the most popular Priest cover band.
And so they saw him and they said, "Hey, come on." Well, I'm so glad to have I know KK Downing's gone. I think Glenn's gone as well, right?
Glenn has Alzheimer's, so he's been coming on the tours and jamming 1 or 2, 3 songs at the end. Like the super simple ones, like "Living After Midnight," like the songs that aren't hard to play, he could still play with his Alzheimer's, so he does still go on the tours, and they surprise everyone at the end. He comes out. But
good.
But there is no talk of KK returning. KK's got a new band called KK's something or other, and he's touring. He's got Les Banks, the original drummer from Judas Priest.
Oh wow!
And I think he's got I don't know if it's Ripper Owens, but he's got all these other guys that were in Judas Priest, and he's starting his own Priest band. I don't know if they're actually going to legally be able to get out there though, because Priest owns all that music, and they'll never let KK go play Priest music without their permission. So you probably won't. It's called KK's Priest, is what it's called, and I just don't think it might not. You might not ever hear about it, but it'd be cool to see him back in the band though. It would be.
Yeah, no, I'm lucky, just like you. Amazing. That was one of my first concerts, and I got to see the original lineup in their prime, and such a great show. And it was great because that was Iron Maiden's first foray into America with Judas Priest, a Number of the Beast tour. It was Judas Priest and Iron Maiden.
That's right. Yep. Big time. Good stuff. Well,
I could talk to you forever about this. There's one other person I want to talk to you about because he's probably one of my favorite metal vocalists. And have you ever met Ronnie James Dio?
When I first joined NHU, Dio played New Haven Coliseum. And Pete Sotier had an interview with Rough Cut, the drummer, as a matter of fact. And what's interesting is the tracks in the movie Rockstar, I think, are done by the singer from Rough Cut, which is kind of interesting.
Paul Sortino. Anyway,
yeah, Paul Sortino, great singer. But so Pete Sotier had an interview lined up with Rough Cut. So we were backstage. I met Wendy Dio. I don't know if Dio was backstage. I don't know if anyone actually, because I wasn't there to interview Dio. I was with a guy from the station that was there to interview Rough Cut. So but I did meet Wendy Dio, and Dio was eating Sally's pizza backstage.
Haven Pizza.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing working for Live Nation. I have turned a lot of bands onto New Haven Pizza. I'm kind of famous for that. I'm like the pizza mafia, sort of. It's great. I've turned a lot of country bands, metal bands. Like I turned Hannah Montana Crew. I turned tons of like country stars. Brad Paisley probably tried Pepe's for the first time ever, and then they came around on tour later. He had a pepperoni pizza like on his big screen. Like it's great. Pepe's New Haven Pizza is world famous. Dave Matthews when they came to town. Aerosmith when they came to town, Pearl Jam when they came to town, we all had to go to New Haven to get pizza, and it was either Sally's or Pepe's.
Yeah. Well, the big question is, which one is your favorite?
Pepe's. I was going to Pepe's since I was a little kid, and my grandparents knew Sal, who was the consiglio, who was one of the original consiglio. He was the famous waiter that would wait on everybody. I've been going there since I was a kid. So Pepe's is my favorite. I still like Sally's too. And I like a lot of the other good pizza places. You got Zupardi's, you got Ernie's in New Haven. You know, I just tried Tipsy Tomato in Derby, and it was amazing. I love Capone's in North Branford, some great pizza. But now with the pizza places everywhere, you know, it's easier when a band comes to Hartford. I just have to go 10 minutes to Pippi's in Manchester now, you know. Yep. But, you know, when Aerosmith's in town, they still need you to go to Sally's no matter where you're at. So, you know, I would drive the van and go pick up $500 worth of Sally's pizza and bring it back for Aerosmith. But I got a quick story about the guy that was Aerosmith's assistant when they wanted pizza when they were playing down in like Delaware. So he was there. So he was the equivalent of what I do. Like you go and get stuff for him, but he was travel on tour. Well, the band was down in Delaware, but they decided they wanted New Haven pizza for dinner. So guess what the guy did? He chartered a private plane, flew to New Haven, to Tweed New Haven Airport.
Oh my God.
He picked up the pizzas, went back to Tweed New Haven Airport, put the pizzas on the plane, and flew back down to Delaware where they were playing. And Aerosmith had Sally's pizza that night. That's literally the extent sometimes that what we go to get bands whatever they want when they come to town. And I'm famous for coming through. You know, when a band comes to town, you know, when Leonard Skinner came to town, and you know, the guitar players, Van Zandt, he needed his amp fixed. You know, I know the guy in West Hartford that fixes amp same day, so I fixed Leonard Skinner's amp in the same day. You know, they were happy for it. You know, stuff like that. It's a lot of fun when, you know, to save the day. You know, when I started working for Live Nation again, we did Farm Aid. First time working for Live Nation in 3 years. I came back from trying other stuff, and the dilemma of the morning was the tour did not have a piano tuner for Neil Young's band. You know, they were looking for a piano tuner. The union didn't know any. My boss didn't know anybody. Nobody knew a piano tuner. Well, I know this girl Karen, you know, from Wallingford that tunes piano. So I called her, Karen, what are you doing? You want to come tune Neil Young's piano? Yeah. So Karen comes up, she tunes Neil Young's band's piano, saves the day. You know, he's one of the headliners. They love her, pay her. And my boss, who runs Live Nation in Connecticut, is giving me the production saving the day knuckles, because that was the one thing the whole tour needed saved, was they needed a piano tuner. And because I'm just resourceful and I know people, I called him
Mike
in. And
Z to the rescue.
That's kind of what I do. You know, I'm that guy when you need to find people that know people or find things or do things. You know, we're like professional treasure hunters, you know, because when they come to town, they might need a piece of hardware for a guitar or something. There might be one store in Connecticut or in Massachusetts that has it, and we have to call and find it and go get it, you know. And I do that stuff like that, just, you know, make sure they get whatever they need. So
was Willie Nelson there?
Willie was, and I met his son. His son Lucas Nelson is awesome. He was just chilling and talking with us. He sounds and plays a lot like his dad. Willie had his weed bus on the tour. So there was literally backstage, there was a bus that opened up into this weed lounge, and you could go and try weed. Willie's, he has his own signature weed brands, and they were literally letting people, and it's infamous to get on Willie's tour bus and smoke weed with Willie. You know, can't say I've done that yet. But some friends of mine have. But that at that particular Farm Aid, he actually had a whole, and that was just for the crew and people backstage. Like this was like a little weed lounge, you know. So Willie still knows how to do it right, you know, for sure. And he's amazing. He's an amazing performer and a great guitar player.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm a huge fan of Willie Nelson. Well, Mike, I could talk to you forever about this. You've met everybody. You've done everything. So I mean, it's so great having you on the show. I definitely have to have you come back when the second single comes out.
I appreciate it, brother. You got an exclusive. This is you got the first interview with Mike Z. Livingston as a new artist in 2020 ever.
I love it.
I couldn't have given it to a better guy and had you the best conversation. So thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it. And I'm going to return the favor when I get my Mike Z View on too. We're going to come on our motorcycle somewhere one night when you're performing at a comedy club, and we're going to have fun, and I'm going to interview you, and we're going to have video. Like that's, I want to make that a segment of one of the things we do. So we'll talk about that, and I'll turn the tables and I'll interview you, buddy. So that sounds.
Well, I appreciate that.
Awesome.
So
awesome. Thank
before
you
we
so
go
much.
though, one more time, just promote your song, promote where people can find you, and what's next.
Absolutely. Right now, today, you can go on to bravewords.com and you can watch the video and see the article that they premiered it with. You can also go to my YouTube channel. That's Mike Z. Livingston on YouTube. And then you can also go to MikeZLivingston.com, Let'sFuckinRide.com, and Ear1Productions.com.
Or if you want to hear the radio edit, Let's Effin' Ride.
That's right. You can find that out. That is out there on YouTube, the Let's Have It. It's all over. And also, the song is available worldwide everywhere you stream music. So it's available Apple, iTunes, Amazon, all of that. So YouTube. So you can get it anywhere, and that's my plan. So I hope everybody gets out there, gets a chance to listen to the video and enjoy it. And I'll be back out in a few months, hopefully with another song. And so yeah, keep an eye out, stay tuned, and let's fucking ride.
All right. Fucking rocking as well.
That's right. You got it, brother.
Mike, thank you very much for being on the show. I will definitely be talking to you soon, either on your show or have you back on my show.
That sounds great, brother. All right.
That wraps up another episode of the Claws Corner, the Zoom edition. I would like to thank my guests, singer, songwriter, guitarist, former DJ, motorcycle enthusiast, and owner of Air One Productions, Mike Z. Livingston. Please, Mike, as I said before, come back on the show anytime. I would also like to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in. Enjoy your day, everyone.